Are you a first home buyer and unsure of where to put your money to get the biggest gains in 2024? The Fast 50 is a valuable resource for property investors looking to make informed decisions about their real estate investments. Be the first to get into the next investment hotspots and make your money work harder for you. Get your free copy of the report now by visiting smartpropertyinvestment.com.au.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello everyone, Grace Ormsby here, back with a bit of an update on what's going on across the real estate and property markets in Australia. It has been a little while since we've done one of these and so much has happened in that time. It is an absolute pleasure to be welcoming senior journalists across real estate business and smart property investment into the studio, Juliette Helmke. Juliette, how are you?
I'm doing well, Grace. Great to be here for another editorial update.
We need to be doing these more often, but it's crazy how quickly things kind of happen. And sometimes we do just get caught up in the day-to-day of a newsroom and what's going on. And obviously we're having discussions all the time, but it was well and truly time for us to give a bit of an update to the listeners about what's going on. And there's a few things we need to be getting through today. We're going to be discussing the latest in the rent caps, a new warning about TV programs around real estate, and also another warning, unfortunately, around scams that are out there. And I think this is a very pertinent, timely reminder for everyone, I think, especially going into what will be a pretty interesting spring selling season. So to kick things off, Juliette, we've been talking a lot lately around the rent cap clash, what we've been to, the Housing Australia Future Fund bill and what that really means. And I think we left the last update we did discussing what might happen, what might be the path forward to that bill getting passed. And there's been a few developments since then.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Grace. So where we left it, I believe that bill was kind of languishing in Parliament. The Greens and the Coalition had decided to basically, put up a wall and stop a vote going forward. And so now that Parliament is back in session after that winter break, the government has said, we're going to get a vote on it. So obviously the same barriers still exist. Prior to the winter break, the government had made a pretty massive concession for particularly what the Greens were pushing for, which was, more material funding going into social and affordable housing building. And they introduced this $2 billion package to be divvied up between the states. When they did that, a number of affordable housing, social housing advocates and homelessness organizations came out and said, we appreciate that they've moved and we want this bill to pass. Over in Parliament, that did not take place. The Greens and the Coalition still sort of held things up. The Greens saying, we want more movement on the issue of rising rents. And they are continuing, they were then and are continuing to push for some level of federal rent caps. Now, the Prime Minister, the Housing Minister, Julie Collins, they have reiterated that is not going to happen on a federal level. What they did do is they agreed to bring it to the next National Cabinet meeting so that it would be a topic of conversation where they can get different states to talk about what they are looking at, what they are considering. But the Prime Minister reiterated, I think, he called it absurd or something for him to step in to enforce any level of federal regulation on that, or to even play a role where he would be negotiating between all the different states with all of their different laws on this issue. So Julie Collins reiterated that there will be no federal rent cap. But of course, it's continuing to be a major, major part of the discussion as this bill gets closer to a vote. And we will really just have to wait and see how the Greens decide to act on that, given that there now is so much pressure from organizations around the country to get this passed so that the funds that are there that are ready to go to contribute to building in Australia, which we all know we need.
We desperately
need to get that starting to roll out, to the communities.
Yeah, it does feel like, it's taking me back to my university days of constitutional law and just the fact that Australia as a whole, the federal parliament can't meddle in every single topic that they want to be meddling in, and rents is definitely one of them. Housing is not really beyond creation of infrastructure. It's not on the national agenda in that way. So, yeah, it is something that, we can't do anything about rental freezes on a federal level. It keeps somehow falling into the discourse that something needs to be done when it cannot. So I guess it is one of those things where we do need to watch this space. I do find it interesting that, the Greens did I can understand politically why they blocked it in the first instance. They've managed to leverage another $2 billion out of that. It would be quite foolish, I think, for them to do that again, given that would lead to a double dissolution, potential reshaping of Parliament across Australia, the potential for the coalition to come back into power, and the Greens won't be getting anything that they're sort of looking for.
That's true. And I think, the Prime Minister was quite strategic in how he addressed questions as to whether he would really pull that political lever if it came down to it. What he did say for sure was that though if we got to that point, the power would sort of be granted to him around October, he said there will be no election in October. But beyond that, he was very careful to make no promises because, that is something he has in his back pocket as a bit of a threat to say, if we don't pass this, the consequences could be pretty major for all of those people in power at the moment.
We will keep you updated with any further developments on this. Obviously, we are very much watching this closely. We're going to take a quick break there. See you on the other side for more editorial updates.
Stop overpaying on your home loan. We understand that managing your finances can be overwhelming, especially as interest rates continue to rise. With access to 70+ lenders, our team of specialised brokers will find the best rates for your specific needs. Count on us to secure a lower rate swiftly, giving you the confidence you deserve. Book an appointment with one of our experts today to protect your financial well-being and secure your future. Call us now at 02 8866 2444 or visit our website at finny.com.au.
Welcome back to this very special editorial update. We've already covered off the latest on the rent cap clash and what that could mean moving forward. Industry-wide, not only, I guess, in the real estate space, but what it means for everyone in society moving forward. There is still that potential that we could have an election a lot sooner than we probably hope. I feel like we went to the polls a lot lately. So, that is something that could come into effect down the track. Hopefully it does not. We will watch this space to see what happens there. But another thing that I want to touch on today, Juliet, and you've written this story up yesterday, actually, very recently. It's very, very fresh. And it's actually a warning to anyone out there in Australia to just be mindful of what we're seeing on TV at the moment, because it may not quite be reality.
It's a really interesting one, Grace. So, the discussion kind of starts around reality TV, where it intersects with property in general, and how realistic the process of buying a house as it's presented on some of these shows is. Now, I think for a lot of people, they recognize that things get left on the cutting room floor. The negotiations are sort of swept over in some ways. But we did see recently the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia taking a pretty firm stance on the recent series of Location Australia and their use of experts and their use of buyer's agents to guide people on this property journey who they said were perhaps not doing the due diligence that a properly accredited buyer's agent would do. So they pointed to a number of issues in the first and second episodes of this latest season where we saw, some suggestions of how to convert spaces in the house without talking about ensuring that the height restrictions would be up to code, where they pushed people to go to auction tomorrow, maybe even go over their budget, knowing that these people didn't have the time to do the due diligence on that property or to ensure that they could get the extra financing were they to actually make the sale. that coupled with the fact that they said, we're not seeing the asset selection, the process of asset selection. We're not seeing all of the behind the scenes things that a buyer's agent will do, that any person buying a property should do to ensure that what they are offering or what they're paying for a property will serve them well in their financial journey. And I think, Kate Barkos, who is the president of the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia, took a pretty firm line and said this could be potentially damaging to Australian buyers out there if they're looking at this kind of content and thinking like, just, follow your dream, get some money, go out and buy a property. You do have to make sure that it's a really solid investment, and whether that means getting advice from somebody or doing your own research, it still needs to be a part of the conversation in this type of television show. Now, look, I watch a number of them myself. I get it. I love this aspirational viewing, to sit down, to imagine, living in this location.
If only.
Exactly. Or getting a peek into somebody's house as well. It sort of, it piques that interest as well. But important to remember that this is, we call it reality TV, but it's potentially not
for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not so close to the reality and the stress and the time that it takes to really buy a property in many ways.
To add a little bit of, I guess, reflection on that story and the fact that it's now a thing, I feel like it probably does just clash a little bit too with, we've seen so much professionalization happen of the real estate profession over the last, especially 5 years, I want to say. The education standards have really been upped. There's a lot more education and training out there for people not only working within the sales and property management spaces, but then in the buyer's agent space as well. So that's where I can see that warning has come from REBA, for them to be, hang on, this isn't quite pitched as reality. And they're probably using the same, structure. I can't imagine location has really changed its model, its method of, it was a successful program when it first came out.
In the many years since it's been on air.
And now it's, been revitalized, but that's more just about the kinds of properties that they're probably looking at and the people that they're talking to. It's moved with the times, but it probably hasn't really taken into account the progress that's been seen in that side of the thing. So in many cases, it's a warning to any buyers out there to not just think that it is an easy breezy process. I don't think anyone that has bought or sold would think that it is an easy breezy process, but it's a good timely reminder for anyone who's a first time investor or a purchaser. But it's also a good warning, I think, to the professionals out there to work out who their clients are and how much knowledge they're bringing into the process, because they can really be that person that, says, hang on, do you really understand what this process is going to involve? Do you have all the people in your team ready, to enact this? Do
Absolutely.
You have pre-approval? Do you have, a financial advisor that's telling you that this is the right move to make? Interesting one. Absolutely. I guess hopefully not watch this space. We don't want to see anyone coming out. I'm thinking as well, we've seen so much scrutiny in the financial advice space, especially of so-called influencers. And I would hate to see it become an issue in the property space as well. So it's probably something that we do need to be watching for and holding people accountable to. So good on Kate Barkos on bringing that out and, just alerting people to that fact. We're going to take another break there. See you very soon for some more editorial updates. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this editorial update. As we said at the beginning of this episode, on the outset, there's been a lot going on lately. We've already discussed today rent cap clashes and what's going on from a political and legislative standpoint. We've gone through to the other end of the spectrum, I guess, of reality TV and some of the potential implications for that. But I do feel like we spend a lot of time in the newsroom at both Real Estate Business and Smart Property Investment talking about scams. And it's not something that I like to talk about, but I think it's also something that we need to keep issuing that warning out there to property professionals, but also buyers and sellers, even renters, as has been seen in an update from the WA ScamNet team that work over at Consumer Protection, and we love the work that they do. They do send some amazing updates as to what's going on, but it was pretty frightening to find out that 41 victims have lost a total of $86,525 since the beginning of 2023. So we're not even 8 full months into the calendar year, and more than 80,000 has been lost to scammers who are posing as landlords. So they're putting out these properties, whether it's on Facebook Marketplace, or I'd say Gumtree is probably one that's also being used. So not really using the usual channels of letting properties, but they're also kind of stealing some of the collateral that is on sites such as realestate.com.au or Domain. And they're using that information to pretend like they are able to be letting out a particular property. And people are falling for it, unfortunately. People are desperate to find suitable accommodation and are handing over large amounts of money as a bond to secure a property without having even seen the property, and being told by the scammers that, we won't be able to do an inspection, but we've got this place for you. It'll be fine. See you on this date. And they come to find out on the day that they think they're moving in that they're going to get the keys, that they haven't been talking to anyone who is by any means able to give them that property, because it's not up for grabs. And it is really, really unfortunate to think that all this money is being lost when we do have a rental crisis at the moment. There are so many people that are in a vulnerable position because of the fact that they need accommodation, and people are being preyed upon for this purpose. So I think it is very much up to all of us who have a voice to be putting this warning out, whether you're a landlord and whether you are an owner-occupier, seeing some of these things going up online, maybe reporting things that you see on Facebook if they don't look quite right, to the professionals out there who can say, this is a trusted way of doing things. It's a good reminder to them as well to make sure they're keeping their eye out on properties that are up for rent in the local area, and just doing a little bit of due diligence.
Yeah. And, Grace, that figure is up significantly on last year, which was a record year for the state for scams. I think last year they lost out 63,000 to 34 victims. And we've seen, a significant amount increase on that this year. How much do you think that that's actually down to the worsening rental crisis and the fact that people are just desperate and wanting to believe that they've found a legitimate property, and they're willing to kind of put a little bit of faith in it when perhaps they shouldn't?
I think definitely has a huge contributing influence, especially when you think that, and we've already talked about this already today, there is growing credibility among professionals, but there's still going to be a group of people that are disillusioned by, their previous experiences, whether that was in a rental property or dealing with trying to get a bond back. So you will get people that probably are trying to backdoor it anyway and just don't want to deal with the system. And it's just not the right time to be doing that, especially when there is such a scarcity of property. Vacancy rates over in WA are so low at the moment. And I do just think we need to be flagging anyone who possibly can some of the precautions, especially that ScamNet has offered to prospective renters, and that is that you make sure that you can physically view the property, or there is someone who can do it on your behalf. And that does become hard as well when you've got so many people migrating in an effort to try and secure a home. They're not moving because they necessarily want to leave where they've lived for the last 10 years, but they're moving because, one, they need to be securing work, and two, they need to find housing that is suitable to their needs and is affordable enough for them to live in for the next 12, 18 months, probably even longer. No one makes moving decisions lightly. So they're also saying that prospective renters should be engaging only with landlords who are willing to meet face-to-face or are operating through licensed real estate agents. So again, that comes back to there should probably be a little bit of an onus on a landlord to make sure that they're making things as easy as possible for people to come through a property or to make those arrangements. And if you do have a prospective tenant who says, I can't make this time, can I come, some other time? Maybe it is about bowing to those demands or seeing where they're coming from, at least when you might have some kind of weird request like that. It comes back to safety.
Absolutely. And on the consumer side of things, like, look, it's important as a consumer to be informed to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Obviously, it doesn't all come down to your responsibility. We do need our law enforcement agencies to be on top of these things. We do need our industry as well to be on top of these things and informing everybody of what the correct way of proceeding in these kind of matters is. I think that another instance this week where we saw, a state agency talking to consumers to tell them to make sure that they're doing their due diligence in real estate transactions came out of Victoria, where the Consumer Affairs body has begun proceedings against a real estate agency that for a period of time was operating unlicensed. Now, it turns out that these instances related to prior to the agency obtaining a license. But what is really unfortunate is that, as Consumer Affairs Victoria pointed out, people who lose money due to a licensed agency breaking the law can access compensation from the Victoria Property Fund, and many states have a similar way of working. But if you lose out on money from somebody who is unlicensed, there is no protection from you. So checking to make sure there are state-by-state registries, checking to ensure that anybody that you're dealing with, if you do believe that you're going through an agency, checking to make sure they're licensed is an important step in your due diligence. Look, again, it shouldn't be on the consumer entirely to make sure that they are protecting themselves. And this is why we do see places like Consumer Affairs Victoria coming down really hard on these instances. The alleged offenses that this agency has to answer for could see them receive fines of over $160,000. But in this market, whether it's buying a house or renting a home, it does pay as a consumer to do everything that you can on your side of things to ensure that the people that you're dealing with are legit. And that's one way you can do it. Check and make sure that they're licensed.
A very good way to finish this episode, offering that reminder. Juliet, thank you so much for sharing your insight, your wisdom, your knowledge with our audience today.
Thank you so much, Grace. It was a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to connect with our audience again.
Looking forward to the next one already. I'm sure we'll have plenty more updates for you. In the meantime, make sure you are staying up to date with all the latest news on our website. Subscribe for our bulletins if you have not already. That's the easiest way to find out what is going on. If you have any questions, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Check us out on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. You should also check out our brand new YouTube account. There's a fair few videos on there already and plenty more to come. Go and subscribe to that if you have not already. Until next time, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.